My name is Penelope, and ever since I can remember, I've always been the smartest one in the room. I'm not kidding. My IQ level is practically Einstein's, or even beyond it. I graduated from a special science high school when I was just 14. My dad, the doctor, always says that I get my brains from him. But I know that's not true. Intelligence is passed on from the mother, not the father. But I never really got to see how smart my mom was because she died when I was very little. Those who like and subscribe to our channel are geniuses too. Click now so you can continue watching this video. But my life turned completely upside down one day. I came home and found a man, woman, and 3 kids blocking the front door to the building. "Shut your mouth if you know what's good for you," the man said to the eldest kid. Then the woman pinched the youngest kid who started to cry. Apparently they lived here too. "What the hell do you want?" the man growled when he saw me. "Are you following us?" "Excuse me? I've lived in this building since I was born," I said to him. The doorman heard us. He quickly led them away to the elevators. "Sorry about that, miss," the doorman said. "That family just moved here last week. I think they live in the apartment above yours." I wanted to tell the doorman that they weren't a family. I saw the brown eyes of all 3 kids. The man and the woman had blue eyes. It's unusual for kids not to have blue eyes when both their parents have it. I completely forgot all about them when I got home because my dad told me some terrible news. There was a mysterious and highly contagious sickness going around. Because of this, my dad ordered me to stay home. He didn't want me to leave the house. I couldn't go to school, and I definitely couldn't go to Starbucks. "We don't know much about this disease yet," he said. "All we know is that it's deadly. So I'm putting you on house arrest for a few days, all right?" I sighed, but I agreed. Dad knows best. He's a great doctor after all. He said that a lot of people decided to stay home as well. He wanted to stay home with me, but he was needed at the hospital. At first, my house arrest felt like a vacation. But after a few days, I started to get edgy. I was getting so bored. There were just so many shows you can watch on Netflix. I wanted my Starbucks. I wanted to talk to my friends face to face. I remember leaning out the window that night, and I stared at the silent streets that were usually filled with the sounds of sirens, honking and cursing. That's when I heard that noise from upstairs. There was a loud bump and a crash. I heard the muffled sounds of a man shouting. Then I heard a loud snap, followed by a heartbreaking cry. Somebody was very angry and somebody was very scared. My curious nature wanted to find out what was going on. So I found a way to do it. I ran to my study table and pulled out the wires we were messing around with in school. It was actually a listening device with an earpiece and a separate transceiver. I found my old broken drone. It couldn't take videos anymore, but it could still fly. I taped the transceiver on the drone and flew it outside my window until it landed on the fire escape ladder upstairs. "Oh, my body hurts all over," I heard that woman say. Then she coughed. "I feel like I'm coming down with the flu." "I feel sick too," replied a man's voice. "But you don't hear me complaining, do you? We'll go ahead with the plan. Tomorrow we'll meet with a social worker to get the money for the kids. I swear those kids eat too damn much. I'm gonna bring them down to 1 meal a day. I don't want to spend that money for their food." My eyes flew open in shock. I listened to them all night. It was hard to understand them because everybody kept coughing and wheezing. They were all complaining that they couldn't breathe. Eventually, I pieced the whole story together. I was right. Those adults weren't the parents. They were foster parents, but they weren't using the money to take care of the kids. Those kids were just meal tickets for the adults. I wanted to tell my dad about it, but he just came home from the hospital then and he barely heard anything I said. Instead, he told me that he kept losing patients because of the mysterious sickness. There was nothing I could do about the health crisis. The only thing I could do right now was to help those kids. I had to take a shower first, though. I haven't bathed in 2 days, and I smelled like a wet dog. That night, my dad went back to the hospital again. Then he sent me a message. "I love you, Penny. Sorry for being mushy. It's crazy here in the hospital. I just found out that there's a new group of people who are sick. They live in our building. Can you believe it? The parents are knocked out but stable, and the kids are in bad shape. The eldest girl kept asking about the bill. I told her not to worry about the bill. Can you imagine how scared she must be if she's thinking about how much that hospital was going to charge them?" Suddenly, something clicked in my brain. "I love you too, Dad. How many kids are there now?" He replied, "There are 2, a boy and a girl, about 6 and 7 years old, I think. Don't you leave the house, okay? There's a bad bug going around and you might catch it even if you're just walking around the building. I gasped and put on the earpiece again. This time I heard a little voice saying, Linda? I knew what to do. There was no other choice. I climbed out into the fire escape. I went into the apartment upstairs. I found the small boy in the middle of the room. He was curled up in a tight ball. Hello, Bill, I said gently. He cried when he saw me and he kept asking for Linda. I told him my name was Penny and that I was his new friend. Then I asked him to play. After a while, we climbed down the fire escape together. I brought him back to my house. I put him on my bed. I stroked his hair for a while and then we both fell asleep. Bill still had tears on his cheeks. I think I did too. I woke up when I heard a knock on the front door. Our housekeeper opened it as I peeked out. I saw the police and I saw my dad too. The police told him about the nurse who called them up last night. The nurse told them about the new patient they had. It was a little girl who lived in the building. The little girl said that they left a little boy named Bill in their house. So the police came to find the boy, but they found something else. They found the drone with a sticker. My name and address were on it. I never saw my dad look that angry at me before. They found Bill on my bed. I tried to tell them about what I heard from the man and woman. I tried to explain that those foster parents weren't really taking care of those children, but nobody took me seriously. I knew that I broke the law, but I was just trying to save the kids from getting hurt. My dad told me that when the parents got discharged from the hospital, they were sure to file a case against me for kidnapping. I thought you were smarter than this, my dad said. They took Bill away. My dad pleaded with the police to let me off. He said that I had just had an overly curious mind. My dad grounded me for a long time. He took my phone away. I was only allowed to use my computer for schoolwork. No Instagram, no FaceTime, no Starbucks. I had no idea what was going on outside my house. When they finally got the mysterious sickness under control, I didn't know what had truly happened to the family upstairs. There was only one thing for me to do, and that was study. So I did, with all my might. I graduated college at 17. I took psychology and went straight to law school instead of med school. My dad was really disappointed that I wasn't going to be a doctor like him, but we kind of drifted apart since then. I finished my course load quickly, and I took the bar exam. I passed, of course, with flying colors, too. I finally moved out of the house this year when I was offered a position in a law firm. I just turned 20 years old this year. With everything that's happened, I never really stopped thinking about those kids, especially about that little boy named Bill. That's why I was so shocked when I was asked to help out on a case. There was a man and a woman who were charged with abusing children that they had in foster care. There were allegations of withholding food and violent punishments. That man and woman managed to foster a lot of children over the years. When I looked at the case file, I recognized the man and the woman right away. They were the couple who lived above us when I was still staying with my dad. The only problem was my law firm was hired to defend them. I went to the first meeting. The man was named Greg and the woman was Sue. They were a married couple. I wanted them to burn in 7 hells, but I couldn't show that until I found out where Bill was. I volunteered to take the formal statements of Sue. She was smoking a cigarette and looked so smug. I hated her so much. These charges started a long time ago, but it was never proven, she said. A few years ago, Greg and I got really sick. There was even this stupid little girl who told the police that we weren't feeding the kids. We didn't press charges because her father begged us not to. Of course, nobody believed her. That little girl seemed so delusional. I wanted to lose it, but I had to keep my cool. I wanted to smash the cigarettes in her stupid face. This woman was lying to me, but somehow I had to gain her trust. I heard about that story, I lied. It sounded so ridiculous back then. It was in the news, I think. So how are your kids? They must be quite grown up now. Sue laughed. You and I have client-lawyer confidentiality, right? You'd never give up my alibi. I nodded. It's all true, my dear, she said. I started to shake from head to toe. I tried to be calm so I could ask the next question. Where are the children now? Did you give them up? What's the name of your social worker back then? And that crazy criminal told me. She told me everything, believing that I was under oath to keep my silence forever. I walked out of the room with my head held high. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't save the kids before, but I could save them now. I went straight to my boss's office and gave him my resignation. Then I drained everything in my savings account and jumped on a plane. It took me a long time to find them. I found the little girl in another city. Her name was Linda. She was currently being fostered by an awful woman who had a lot of children in her house. Linda was the eldest one there. She was only 13, but she had to take care of all the younger kids. She cried when I told her that I would do anything to get her out of there. She also cried when she told me that the other little boy's name was Hank. He didn't survive. After they got discharged from the hospital 6 years ago, he was moved to another foster home, but he was still weak and he didn't survive. Linda and I went to find Bill. That little boy was lucky. He was actually adopted by a nice gay couple in the country. He's 9 years old now. When he saw me, he said that I looked like a person he dreams about all the time. I cried when I heard that. Then I hugged him as tight as I could. I took Linda with me. When we got home, it was chaos. The law firm wanted to sue me, but they couldn't. Word got out to the media about what Sue and Greg really did. The reporters came after me, and I felt like it was my responsibility to tell the truth. The law firm was in hot water about defending people like that. Greg and Sue were convicted by the courts. They were sent to jail for the rest of their lives. The police are still tracking down the rest of the children. As for me, well, I lost my license to practice law. First and foremost, I broke lawyer-client confidentiality, and I talked to the media about the case. I didn't have any money left, and I needed to give Linda a proper home. So I went back to my dad, even if I didn't know what to expect from him. When he met me at the door, he looked at me for a long time. Then he put his arms around me. "I am so proud of you," he said. My dad was still practicing medicine. He was more than happy to take us in. Last night, after tucking Linda to bed in my old room, I went to have a talk with my dad. "I've been thinking," I said. "Law wasn't really for me. I think I'll go back to school. I'd like to take up medicine this time." He smiled and replied, "Helping people is in your blood. You get it from me," he replied. Then I asked him to help me with something more important than medical school. "Dad, can you help me with some adoption papers? I'm not actually eligible to adopt because I have no steady job right now. I know I'll be a good doctor someday, but right now, it's not about my brains anymore. It's about my heart." He hugged me tight, and then he sighed. "There's something I have to tell you. I should have told you years ago, but was scared that I might lose you. My dad told me that I was adopted. He and my mom fostered me right after I was born. In less than 6 months, they adopted me. But then, after a year, my mom passed away. I didn't think that we could ever love a little child so much," my dad said. "After your mom died, you were the only thing that kept me going. You became my life." A million questions burst into my head. I wanted to know who my birth mother was. Why did she give me up? Where was she now? Was she a genius too? What happened to her? But I shook my head. That mystery could wait another day. I had to focus on Linda now. I took my dad's hand and looked into his eyes, filled with tears. I said, "You never made me feel like I wasn't really your child. Thank you." He replied, "I always knew you would do great things. Being a lawyer and a doctor is just the tip of the iceberg. Now I can see you're going to be a great mom too. Great mom too. Great."
As if the last year of school before college wasn't stressful enough, my dad got himself fired and we had to move to a new city so he could find a new job. It wouldn't have been so bad, except Dad was a teacher at my school, so everyone knew what he'd done. It was one of the worst things to happen to us since Mom died when I was 12. But this time, it was all Dad's fault. You see, he was having an affair with the principal's wife, and someone in my grade filmed them and shared it across social media. I could have stayed at this school and finished my exams, but let's be honest, I'd never live it down. I lasted about 3 days before I went to the principal and told him I was leaving. He didn't even look at me. He just said, "You should be ashamed of your dad. Get out of my school." When I was emptying out my locker, one guy came up to me and said that me and my dad were a disgrace, and I shouldn't show my face in this town again. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. So Dad and I packed up and moved, leaving our old life behind. I was miserable at first. The video was still viral, and I even thought about asking Dad if I could change my surname to Mom's old name, just so I wouldn't have to be associated with it all. Dad couldn't find a job anywhere. Everyone recognized him from the video, and some newspapers had written about it too. It was a nightmare. I knew I'd have to start at a new school so I could sit my final exams, so I decided to try and disguise myself. I cut my long hair into a pixie cut and bleached it blonde. Then I got my nose pierced. On the first day, Dad offered to drive me, but I told him I'd walk, just in case anyone recognized him. I knew I was being mean to him, but I didn't care. He'd ruined my reputation, and I wasn't about to let him do it again. As I was walking to school, I wasn't paying attention, and I bumped into a young guy. "Hey, watch it," he said. "I'm blind." I apologized, then looked back at him. Wow, I'd never have known he was blind. And then I got an idea. I reached into my bag and put on my sunglasses, and then when I got closer to the school, I held onto the wall and walked alongside it slowly. I could see people looking at me, but I didn't care. A few people started whispering, and I let go of the wall. What was I even doing? But then a girl came up to me and introduced herself as Elsie and took me by the arm and offered to help me walk to class. She said her brother was blind too, so she knew how difficult it could be sometimes. Well, too late now. I'd started this, so I just have to play along. I mean, how hard could it be? I told her I was new around here and this was my first day. She seemed so excited. She started describing things to me, like where the girls' bathroom was, and then she took me to register, and I was so sure the principal would know I was lying. But it seemed this school took disability seriously. For the first time in ages, I felt like people actually cared about me. Elsie was assigned as my guide, and that first morning passed in a blur. When she introduced me to her boyfriend at lunch, I had to stop myself from staring at him. He was such a babe. But then I realized I could stare all I wanted because he obviously thought I couldn't see him. And when Elsie had her back turned, I could see him checking me out, looking me up and down. And from the way his mouth was hanging open, it was clear he thought I looked good. It was like a whole new world had opened up. As soon as people found out I was blind, they did all kinds of things in front of me. One guy was picking his nose, and then when we went to the bathroom, Elsie didn't even close the door. It was pretty awkward, but what could I do? Surely someone would catch me out. And yup, sure enough, in the afternoon, things went downhill. Elsie dropped me off at the classroom for people with special needs, and then she just left me there. I looked around me and realized people there seriously had proper disabilities and learning difficulties. I wanted to scream that I was a fraud and run out, but the teacher came over to me and gave me a hug, and I was reminded why I was doing this. Anything to avoid being the girl whose dad got fired because of an affair. But then she put a book in front of me, and I realized it was Braille, and my heart almost stopped. How was I supposed to know what this book was about? I had no clue how to read it. I had to get out of there. I told her I wasn't feeling very well, and then I reached out to grab onto the chair in front of me so I could feel my way out of the classroom. But I didn't even realize how hard I'd pulled it, or the fact there was someone sitting in it. And the next moment, the chair was falling on top of me, and then a girl fell onto the floor. I just lay there trying not to cry. How had I not seen her sitting there? This whole faking being blind thing was starting to mess with me. Then it got worse. She landed on her arm and broke it. She was actually blind, which made me feel so bad. And no one was even angry with me because they all assumed I couldn't see. The teacher ordered an ambulance for the blind girl and offered to call my parents to pick me up. And I panicked and said my dad was sick and my mom had passed away years ago. The teacher felt so bad for me and said I could rest in her office until the end of the day, and then she'd drive me home. I sat in the teacher's office and waited, and then eventually I decided to leave without her noticing. I left a note thanking her for looking after me. I wrote it with my left hand, of course, so it would look realistic, and then I snuck out. Everyone was in class, so I just walked out of there like normal and headed home. When I got home, Dad was in a good mood. He'd got a job interview and he had a date that night. I just ignored him and went to my room. What a crazy first day! The next day, Elsie was waiting for me at the gate, and I had to pretend I didn't see her and walk straight past her, but she grabbed my hand and helped me to class again. Then my teacher was there to welcome me, and she said she had some exciting news. That seeing as I was 18 and blind, and my dad was sick, I could claim some benefits to help me out. I couldn't believe it! Jackpot! Maybe being blind wasn't so bad after all. That morning I had gym class, which I wasn't expecting. I thought another perk of being blind would be that I got to skip sports and stuff. But no, it was so humiliating. It was a swimming class. The gym teacher gave me a swimsuit and I put it on backwards, thinking that would be more realistic. But our special needs department teacher rolled her eyes at me and said that by now surely I knew how to dress myself. She'd been so nice to me up until now. I didn't get it. I kept watching her and she was constantly looking at her phone. The rest of the day dragged by. Faking being blind was hard work. After school, I decided to go check out the mall. I wore my sunglasses in case anyone from school saw me. Anyway, the mall was pretty lame, so I bought a milkshake and decided to leave. Suddenly, I saw Elsie and her boyfriend, and I panicked. I was playing on my phone, and I was like, that's it, my act is up. They were kissing, so I walked by quickly, hoping they wouldn't see me. And then I realized something. It wasn't Elsie he was kissing. I looked right at him, and he froze and opened his mouth to say something. Then I heard him whisper under his breath, "Never mind, she's blind. Phew. Except I wasn't blind, mister, and you have officially been caught in the act." I walked back around, hid behind the fountain, and quickly snapped a pic of them kissing. Elsie deserved better. I looked her up on Instagram and sent her a private message with the photo. She replied straight away saying, "Who is this? Why are you trying to ruin my relationship?" And then it clicked. My Instagram handle wasn't my name, and my pic looked nothing like me. Oh yeah, and I was blind. Obviously she didn't know it was me. Well, at least she now knew that her boyfriend was a lying, cheating. Over the next few days, Elsie didn't come to school, and I regretted sending her that photo. If she found out it had been me who sent it, I'd probably have lost my only friend. I could see her boyfriend looking at me in a horrible way, but I just kept my head down. She must have told him someone had seen him that day. Was he on to me? He definitely was, because on Friday afternoon, I saw him going into my locker and taking my phone. It took all my strength not to jump out at him and stop him, but it was too late. He had taken it. I hurried home wondering what I could do. He'd see all the photos and figure out I'd been faking it. I could report my phone missing, but I had no proof that it was him that had done it. I couldn't exactly say I'd seen him. I just wanted to get home to try and figure out what I'd do next. Except that was not what happened. My dad had invited his date over, and as soon as I walked through the door, he told me to get changed and come join him in the kitchen. Great, just what I needed. I was chopping carrots when she arrived. I turned around as my dad introduced her. "Allison, sweetie, come meet my new girlfriend, Susan." I literally just missed my foot. I dropped the knife right out of my hand and stared in shock. "Oh no, Allison, are you okay? Wow, what a coincidence. You shouldn't be using sharp knives. Come on, Kevin, surely you know better than that," she said. "Hang on, you two know each other?" my dad said. "Why, yes, of course. I'm Allison's teacher. Why didn't you mention your daughter was blind? I had no idea you were her father. In fact, she told me her father was sick." I stood there, my skin burning with shame. I had to run. This was my absolute worst nightmare. "Allison!" my dad screamed, and that was how I got caught. I'd faked being blind because I just wanted people to like me and not associate me with my dad's mistakes. And now I'd gone and messed up everything, including my dad's new relationship. Susan, my teacher, was so upset with me and said I was a huge disappointment and that she didn't want to be with a man who raised a daughter like me. I guess I was just as bad as my dad, like father, like daughter. I wish I could say it all blew over after that and that I went back to school the following Monday and started afresh. Nope, life doesn't work like that. I was expelled, of course, and that Monday after school, there was a knock at the door. Elsie was standing there, and I held my breath, assuming she was about to go crazy at me. But instead, she just handed me my phone. She said she'd been angry to find out I'd been lying about being blind, especially as her brother was blind, and it wasn't okay to joke about this kind of thing. But then she said I'd saved her from dating a cheater. She was so grateful. I was shocked. That was not how I expected her to react. She said she'd broken up with her boyfriend and that he'd been suspended for stealing. "So, you still want to be my friend?" I asked her, and she did. I couldn't believe it. "Sure, and I had to find a way to help my dad. He was so depressed about Susan breaking up with him. I plucked up the courage and called Susan and asked if she would meet me so we could chat. She agreed, and when we met, I told her I'd really messed up, but I'd only done it because of what had happened at my last school. I told her my dad had made some stupid choices in the past, and I had too, but he really liked her and deserved a second chance. I said I'd do anything to make it up to her and begged her to ask the school to let me come back. Well, not only did they let me come back and finish my last year, they even hired my dad. Him and Susan are together now, and Elsie is my best friend. We're even going to the same college. And I've actually been learning Braille for reals. Part of the deal of finishing school was that I volunteered to help the kids with learning difficulties. I mean, it's the least I could do, right? I won't ever fake anything again. And guess what? People actually forget stuff. My dad's affair at my old school is old news now, and so is my whole faking being blind thing. Here's to a more honest future.